Back in 1985, a loud, extremely strong, and very troublesome radio signal filled the ether over Liverpool and the surrounding area, completely wiping out the region's emergency marine channel. I love to go back in time and immerse myself in these tales and share them with you, and this is another brilliant story from my archives that has never been told before. It's absolutely brilliant, so be sure to stay tuned, and if you remember this incident, please let us know in the comments. Saturday the 25th of May 1985 was a day similar to today. Pleasant weather with a moderate wind of only force 3, ideal conditions for the busy shipping lanes in and around the port of Liverpool on the northwest coast of the UK. As the people of Liverpool were going about their day, in the pubs, around the shops or at home, GPO radio investigation officers from the Home Office were desperately trying to trace a radio transmitter which had been left open, transmitting an extremely strong signal across Merseyside. The problem was that the transmitter was on the Marine Band Emergency Channel 16 and was potentially blanking out emergency messages from ships out in the Liverpool Bay. The team of investigators arrived in the area quickly due to the nature and location of the signal, the Marine Band being critical infrastructure. Armed with antennas, spectrum analyzers and radio receivers, they scoured the wider Liverpool area in search of the signal. Inquiries led the Home Office radio investigation team to the Birkenhead Dockland area, across the river from the town of Liverpool, but after a day of investigation work, they were unable to pinpoint the location of the offending transmitter. The signal was described as a steady humming sound which blocked off all but the very strongest of signals from vessels in the bay and the river area. The problem was wider than just Liverpool, however, and it was causing Coastguards a major headache. Liverpool was just part of a large marine radio system that covered the area, and so other marine transmitter sites were affected by the rogue signal. The radio masts at Crosby Coastguard Station weren't the only ones affected. The station over at Kelsall near Frodsham, over 15 miles to the southeast, was also being jammed. This rural radio site was home to multiple users and fed radio traffic into the marine system and was suffering from major interference. Blackpool Towers marine radio transmitters 28 miles to the north were also affected, which gives an idea just how large of a footprint the humming signal had. At the time, the risk posed by the rogue transmitter was relatively low because the weather was fine and other vessels could help to pass messages, but it could have proven to be a major problem if the weather deteriorated. A full-scale emergency would have been hard to manage with the emergency channel out of action. At first, Coastguards theorised that the stuck transmitter may have been battery-powered and hoped it would fail as its batteries ran out. However, as the day wore on, they had no such luck and feared it might be plugged into the mains somewhere. Liverpool Coastguards tried to advise local boats and people going out on the water who contacted them about the weather to call them on channel 67 instead of 16. By the Sunday, the Home Office radio investigation team were still focused around the Birkenhead Dockland area, but they were still unable to pinpoint the stuck transmitter. The reason they found it difficult to locate was never made clear, as pirate radio stations were found relatively easier during the weeks prior. The Home Office men visited Birkenhead's Camel Laird shipbuilder's yard after their equipment seemed to suggest that location as the source of the interference, but after some investigation they found nothing. A local insulation firm was also visited, but again the interference was not found to be coming from there. While the GPO men searched, the Coastguard was conducting some backup solutions. Ramsey Coastguard on the Isle of Man were not so badly affected by the signal, despite still receiving it 83 miles away to the northwest. Ramsey Coastguard was providing extra radio cover for ships around the Liverpool area. All ships were asked to keep an ear out for emergency traffic from vessels in trouble so that messages could be relayed. The signal continued throughout the Monday, and the GPO investigators were still scratching their heads. By Tuesday there was a development. On the Tuesday evening, the transmitter appeared to have been switched off, and the Coastguard heaved a sigh of relief. But by Wednesday it was back on again with renewed force. The signal was stronger, and the humming sound was more intense. The Coastguard said they'd lost count of how many general calls they'd missed because of the interference, but they did know they hadn't missed any distress alerts. The Home Office investigators proposed a more sinister explanation that it was the work of a prankster. One of them said anyone who could be so malicious must have something wrong with him. On the other hand, it could be someone who doesn't know what he's doing. They searched marinas and mooring places, hoping to find a vessel that potentially had a stuck transmitter, but the searches revealed nothing. They entered the housing estates around Birkenhead in search of somebody menacing the airwaves from the confines of their home, but again found nothing. GPO vans prowled the streets looking for a potential mobile station that was moving around in order to avoid detection. For the Home Office men, it was a race against time to trace the transmitter before the good weather broke. If the conditions were bad at sea, the problem would be much more serious, a spokesman said. By Thursday, the signal had faded out quite significantly and was much less intense, but the cause of the interference still remained a mystery. The riddle became more complicated when the interference started floating up and down the band. It was observed leaving channel 16 and then briefly returning to the distress frequency. The Home Office investigators scrapped the theory that it was deliberate and now believe that the problem stemmed from something emitting a drifting signal from a warehouse in the Holt Road area of Birkenhead. Upon further investigation, they found that the only mains equipment in the suspected warehouse was a burglar alarm and a closed-circuit television monitoring system. Tests revealed none of the equipment was the source of the signal. They suspected that the interference was caused by some wiring in the yard next to the warehouse, but after spending a large amount of time investigating, they weren't able to ascertain what it was. Even the experts didn't seem to know the cause for sure, but by the Friday it had migrated onto another frequency and was clear of the marine distress channel. Disaster averted. The mystery signal disappeared as quickly as it came, and the Home Office men called it a day. The true source of the Liverpool hum was never discovered, and the incident was lost to time and eventually forgotten.